On a sad note, 8-year-old Pleasure Beau, who was judged the best presented in the mounting yard, lost his life when he fell heavily with a lap to go. In the closing stages, the outsider Still There looked a big chance of winning. But as he tied, the favourites Caledonian Concord and Red Cavalier were running on.
Coming down to the last fence, Red Cavalier down the outside is after Caledonian Concord. At the last one, Caledonian Concord. Red Cavalier over on the outside is coming at him. Red Cavalier, Caledonian Concord. Here's a great go to the line. And, oh, boy, oh, very close. Caledonian Concord or Red Cavalier in a tight one. They're right apart.
Red Cavalier on the outside got there to win by a nose. It was a magnificent ride by Jamie Evans and the third success in the race for Tasmanian owner-trainer Michael Trinder.
Did you think you'd won from your angle?
From my angle, I was watching it from where the floats are parked. I didn't see a jump.
What a tribute to the courage of Red Cavalier, who made a mess of the last fence.
Yes, the thing with this horse, in my previous Hiskin winners in Monsist and Tengahari, they were very, very good horses and good jumpers. This horse is that tenacious, he will never give up, and what he lacks in ability, he makes up for in courage.
Yes, what a good horse he is. He had 96 starts, Red Cavalier, and he's won over $200,000 in prize money, and he's won every year since he was a 2-year-old. Michael Trinder winning there, and speaking of the Trinders, Ray Trinder, who's 88 years of age, is Michael's father, won a Melbourne Cup with Piping Lane way back in 1972. Jim Bowler wasn't handicapping them in 1972, but he would have been paying attention. He's joined us today because Jim is the handicapper for the VRC, and therefore he's the man who decides what horses get and which weight they get in the Melbourne Cup. Thanks for joining us, Jim.
Morning, Bruce.
You weren't handicapping in 72, were you?
No, but I saw a very good horse win the Caulfield Cup in Sobar the same year.
He was a great 3-year-old, wasn't he?
He was.
A brilliant horse. Jim, the Melbourne Cup, you've released the weights this morning. Just before we have a look at them, where do you start? I mean, you've got 527 horses. Do you do it alphabetically? Do you start at the top, start at the bottom? Just tell us.
Always start at the top, Bruce. Always start with the best and work down. That gives you your level. That tells you where to go from step by step, but always start with the best.
Well, we're about to have a look at last year's Melbourne Cup, just the last couple of 100 metres with Terrific getting up to defeat Superimpose, a Quinella for Lee Friedman. How important are the 2-mile events, including the Melbourne Cup prior to when you go and handicap the horses for this year?
Of paramount importance. I mean, that's what they're there, that's what they're aiming to achieve. How they can best perform at 2 miles really determines the weight they receive.
So, Terrific last year and Superimpose. Now, Superimpose is a horse who's been able to win at 1,600 metres in the very best of company. Year older, these horses. Difficult to assess them?
Well, in some ways, Superimpose really framed the weights for this year's Cup. You're seeing here Terrific's win coming down the centre of the track there. A lot of authority in Terrific's win last year in the Melbourne Cup. Superimpose I had to weigh up. Did his win in the Doncaster at a mile make him any better at 2 miles? In the end I said no. I lifted him a kilo to 57, the same as I lifted Nay Rizzi for running up in the Caulfield Cup, and Terrific goes up 2.5 kilos for his win in the Melbourne Cup last year.
Well, let's have a look at the weights and the main horses, the top 11, and we start at 57. Now, that's an unusual weight. Normally it's been higher than that, hasn't it?
Well, that's right. It's a little bit of history on both counts this year. The first time that 3 horses have headed the weights for the Melbourne Cup, and the lowest top weight at 57, which is the mandatory top weight.
All time?
All time.
All time lowest weight. So what does that mean, Jim? The Better Loosen Up, Savage Toss and Superimpose aren't as good as the champions in the past?
No, I wouldn't mind having any one of those 3 in my backyard. It means it's a very even field, Bruce, this year. There's a lot of depth about this year's Melbourne Cup. We can go down to the 11 you're showing on the screen now, of which the last is Waterboat Man, the Adelaide Cup winner. Above him, King Aussie from the Sydney Cup, Flying Luskin from the Wellington Cup, Coal Diesel, the Caulfield Cup, and the very much improved Sedestin from the International in Sydney.
Well, historically, the top weights when you originally put out the handicaps don't win. I think Comic Court was the last one in 1950, and I think Rising Fast was the last one to wear number 1 in 54.
That's right, that's right.
So where do we look for the winner, Jim?
Well, he's there amongst the 527 somewhere, Bruce. I've tried to make it as equal as I can. It's up now to the scribes and the public to select the one that we can pinpoint on the first Wednesday in November and say, here's the Melbourne Cup winner.
What about that New Zealand smoky? We always remember Evan Stevens in the old days. There's always a smoky from New Zealand. Is there one this year, do you think?
Well, I thought this year there were a couple of aspects to the Cup. I didn't think the 4-year-olds were as good this year as in past years, although the Derby winners in Dr. Grace and Stylish Century head the category there. But on the positive side, it's one of the strongest New Zealand entries I've seen, and also the reports are from New Zealand this morning that many of them will be heading across the Tasman for the Spring Carnival in Melbourne.
How tough a job is it? I could imagine there's a lot of pressure because Bart Cummings, Colin Hayes, Tommy Smith, they wouldn't be too happy if you gave them a kilo too much for their top horses.
Well, not too many people ring you up, Bruce, and say, can we have a little bit more, put it that way.
Now, an interesting one about Bart, he's won 7 Melbourne Cups, the record, But is he? I don't think he's won a Melbourne Cup since you've been handicapping.
No, he hasn't won one under me. I've kept him at bay, but Mr Hayes has won a few. But it's made to go round. That's the good thing about it.
So for a handicapper, first Tuesday in November, what's the perfect result for you?
Wide betting race, a lot of public interest and a good crowd on course.
Okay, so we've got that to look forward to.